I've got a really strange encounter for you today. I've got Ernie with me, and Ernie was out hunting for deer one day when he ran across a Bigfoot creature that was doing a lot of different strange things. This is a very, very strange encounter full of lots of details. This creature was less than 5 feet away from him, actually held his hand out to Ernie. A lot of different stuff happened, and we're going to get into every detail. You do not want to miss a second of this episode. But before I do, I just want to say thanks for being here today. If you've got an encounter you would like to send me, you can send it to me by email at mysteriesunknownpodcast@gmail.com. But let's jump right into the story. Ernie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, man, I'm really excited to have you here and to hear about this encounter. So if you would, take us back to the 80s and just walk us through it.
This started in Massachusetts in the Cabo Mountain region. I was going in for a hunt, a deer hunt by myself, pretty much the last day of deer season, and with my shotgun. And I did carry a sidearm for those that say you can't hunt with a handgun. I'm not hunting with a handgun. It's just like carrying a knife. I'm carrying something in case something happens to me while I'm out there. I also have a knapsack. You don't know. Maybe it's to save somebody else's life or my own life, but I go in prepared. That morning, I loaded up. I had done all my homework in the past, and on that day, I had my topographical maps. I knew where the deer were going to be more than likely bedded down that morning. Was on the Granville side of the Drake Mountain. So you'd approach it from the Westfield side, drive by the some of the apple orchards, and then right to the reservoir. I could hook a right and go into Cowell Mountain, or get out and walk left, and that's what I did. I get out, I park my car, walk left, 'cause it's only accessible on foot. And I had gone in probably, I want to say maybe, I don't know, half a mile or so. I had to walk by what they called Indian Rock. Nobody knows to this day who actually painted the rock to start with. But as you approach the rock, it looks like a silhouette of one Indian, and as you get in front of it, another Indian, and as you walk by it, another Indian. So it's quite the thing to see up there. But there's a trail, an old I call them fire roads and logging roads and things like that. As it turned out, I learned later on, way later on, many many years later, that was actually part of what they called Uncomit's Path. And Uncomit is the name of an Indian who would bring up the tax collectors from the colonial villages in Connecticut up through the passes and stuff over the top of these ridges and all the way out to Pittsfield to collect the taxes in the other colonial villages that were up through that way. I think it encompasses like 70 something miles, something like that. And not all of it is even known as part of the Appalachian Trail. But anyways, about three-quarters of the way up, it that trail hooks to the left, and then it hooks back over to the right to go over the top of the ridge. Well, right around that corner, before it hooks to the right, there's a couple of boulders, and one of them's like 40 feet high. And I used to make believe that it was like Stonehenge, and I had seen evidence that the deer were bedding down in that area right there. And that morning, actually, the wind was blowing over the top of that ridge down towards where I was making my entrance from. So I knew that they weren't going to smell me going in there. And that was my objective, to sneak up on them and take a harvest that morning. It was kind of crispy out. I could see my breath, a little bit, not a lot. So I figured the temperature had to be probably hovering around 33, 32, 33 degrees, somewhere's right around there. There was a little bit of frost on the ground. Thank goodness that the trailway itself, I had a lot of flat rocks there that were like sandstone or whatever, and there was leaves and everything were kind of frozen. So I didn't really want to walk on anything crunchy. I was trying to be extra careful getting in there. Well, I got pretty close to those Stonehenge rocks, and the deer jumped up. And anybody who hunts, you know the sound of a deer when it stands, like almost like stomps, and it sounded like it was probably three, maybe four deer in that little group there. And they took off away from me. I never seen them, they never seen me. Obviously, I felt something gave away my position. So my only alternative at this point was to try stalking them, but I chose to stalk them in a manner that um, I call it two-stepping. You're gonna go toe heel, and you're gonna try to be as quiet as you possibly can. So if and move when they move, and then try to get out in front of them. That was my objective, to get out in front of them and set up an ambush point because I knew where they were headed to. So as I proceeded up that trail, two-stepping, I could hear them just on the other side of the ridge. I couldn't see them, but I could just hear them. They move, I move, and so on. But just on the other side of them, running parallel to my path now, I thought I heard like what could have been a buck or something like that, but they were running straight, not running, but browsing, walking straight towards that my objective where I was set up my ambush. So I passed it off. This was all after everything happened, that these little clues were coming in on me and what was really going on. Well, I had managed to get out in front of them. And at the point where I get out in front of them, the trail keeps going straight down towards that apple orchard that I passed on the main road there. And I actually met this family there also. And they've had encounters there. And there's a little bus stop right near them too. And they've actually had tracks that was recorded in the Westfield Evening News, in their newspaper and everything. But probably from the Stonehenge rocks out to where my ambush point was going to be set up was probably maybe 200 yards or so. And at that point, where it kept going straight, there was a little dog leg that hooked back around and came back down the other side of Drake Mountain. That was the mountain that I was on. In between the path that was paralleling on the ridge and that dog leg, there was a stone wall that ran right across, and I knew it well. And there was a couple of old pines right there. And on the on the other side where they were coming up, there was beech nut saplings on that side. So I had managed to get out there, but as I approached that little juncture, that little dog leg, that hook right there, I took note of that whole area because I didn't want to scare a squirrel or a grouse or a turkey or whatever, or another deer that might be laying down and destroy my chances of getting a harvest because I really needed a harvest. Um, I'm going to go back and tell you is when I was two-stepping two here, is what I was trying to do is to become like a four-legged, sound like a four-legged animal. I just want you to keep that in mind, as I was no longer, if they did hear me, going to sound like a two-legged animal. I was going to sound like a four-legged animal. But I got out to that point. I didn't see anything out on that dog leg. There wasn't anything there. And I could hear them coming through the saplings, and they were slowing up. So I took my position up facing that stone wall, and I just crouched down a little bit. I knew they were coming right for that stone wall, and as soon as they came over to the stone wall, I was gonna get one of them. It was probably only like maybe, I think maybe tops 40 yards, something like that. It's a piece of cake shot for my shotgun. I was carrying slugs. I don't believe in buckshot. It's not that effective unless you're close up. It was, for you hunters out there, it was a 2 3/4 inch Remington semi-auto recoil barrel. Okay. So you know that if I got slugs in there, I'm pretty much, I can put some slugs out there, but a buckshot at 40 yards, I'm just going to injure an awful lot of deer. And that wasn't my objective. When I go hunting, I mean to take it down right then and there. But I could hear them coming towards me. I'm crouched down a little bit, and I got my 12 gauge right up on my shoulder. I've got it pointed right at that stone wall, waiting for them to come over, and they stopped. And I'm waiting, and not long, maybe just a couple seconds. And I pick up movement on my 9 o'clock, just on my left hand side, and I scanned over there. I still got my 12 gauge still pointed over at that stone wall, but I scanned over to my left-hand side, and just in my peripheral vision, I see something laying next to a tree, just basically like a silhouette of it. probably at around the 35-yard mark on one of the podcasts I was on. Um, we did advanced Google Earth and we dropped a pin on where I said I was standing, and then we dropped a pin on that tree. It was 38 yards. I used to do a lot of bow hunting. There's no brag there. There's just fact. I might have missed that target by maybe 6 or 7 inches, but I would have hit it with a bow and arrow. So it's laying there by the tree, and I figured that it's probably a deer. And a lot of people say, well, how can you mistake a deer for something else? Well, you can mistake a stump for just about anything. People do it all day long. You want to be very cognizant of what you're doing out there in the woods. You don't just want to go, oh, hey, there's a deer and shoot. The other thing that stopped me and made me look at it a little bit harder was the fact is I was brought up in to never shoot a deer laying down. I was told that, whether my dad and my great uncle told me just to put the fear of God into me or not, they said that the warden, when they take a sample of your deer down at the check-in station, because you could take it to check-in station in Massachusetts, they can tell if it was laying down sleeping or not, and you get yourself in a lot of trouble. So I don't care. I don't know. I'm not shooting one laying down, regardless what anybody out there says. Okay. I'm not doing it. It's not very sportsmanlike. And besides, if it is true, I don't want to go to jail for shooting something that's laying down on the ground sleeping. So I'm just kind of bouncing my eyes back and forth and trying to remain cognizant of those deer on the other side of the stone wall. And I realize that this thing is scrunching up towards the tree a little bit more. And now it's big bodied. And I'm thinking now that it's definitely not a deer. This has got to be a bear, the way it's scrunching up to the tree. And now I shift my shotgun over to it because I don't want to be bum rushed by a bear. If there's a bear there that I missed when I first came into that point of my ambush, then there's probably a cubs close by or in a tree or something, and I don't need to have any an altercation with the bear. I don't have a permit, and it's kind of hard to prove that the bear attacked you or whatever, because generally you've got to, it's a rigmarole. You got to bring the warden in there, bring them all back to where this happened and everything else. So I got my shotgun on it, and then it's punches up to that tree even more, and it's got the silhouette of a man. So now I'm really my focus goes from 50-50 back onto those deer on the other side of the stone wall. And they've stopped. They're browsing. I can hear them rustling over there, and it sounds just like they're browsing. So I'm bringing my whole attention back over to across that stone wall. And this guy starts getting up, and he's got his head around the other side of that tree. And I'm still kind of like bouncing a little bit back and forth. I'm really trying to remain 100% on those deer on the other side of the stone wall, but he kind of has my attention because his head's around the other side of the tree. I don't believe that he knows that I'm there. And if those deer come over that stone wall, I'm liable to get myself shot with buckshot. He's not going to miss at that range with buckshot. I'm going to get hit with one of them, and that won't be nice. I don't need holes in my jacket or my shirt or anything. I just, it's just the way it is. And I notice that he's still getting up. Now I'm thinking, you know, uh, this is a big guy. I says, I got to get myself into a position so that if them deer come over that stone wall and they try to go between us and he has to shift his body to my side of the tree and his head to my side of the tree, he'll catch me in his peripheral vision. So I moved up a little here. I'm still kind of trying to squat down, you know, but I move up just a little bit, so I'll be caught in the peripheral vision, and that'll cure that, so I can focus on the deer. Because the first good sized deer can lure the stone wall. That's my deer. There's not going to be any argument about that. That's my deer. And again, I glanced over at this guy to see what he's doing, and he's enormous. This guy's huge. And I'm actually looking for a mark on the tree, like a branch, a twig. I'm looking for something because I'm thinking that I'm going to need to walk over there and figure out how tall this guy was if he doesn't come walking over here. So I see a piece of moss. His head's still on the other side of the tree. I see a piece of moss. I go, good, there it is. At that point, all hell broke loose on the other side of the stone wall. There was a knockdown, drag out. I can't even explain it to anybody. The noises that were coming over there, it sounded like something came out of the trees. There was boulders clacking. There wasn't just branches breaking. And I know people that maybe might want to retell this story. Be good at retelling it because you don't want me in the audience to hear my own story and have to correct you on this. They weren't branches. These things were limbs. I heard them hitting like if you went down to the gym and found a 250-pound bag and took a baseball bat and hit that bag as hard as you can, you there's a difference between hit it with a branch and a good solid limb, and that's what this sounded like. It sounded like a baseball bat hitting the side of an ugly thud. For people out there to understand it, have taken martial arts, there's a thing called an ugly thud. You know when you really hit somebody really hard when you just hear those thud marks or you're witnessing something like that. But this guy caught my gaze again while this knockdown dragout was going on, and he stuck his head around my side of the tree, and now I'm getting a really good glimpse of this guy. Now, some people might say, "Well, wasn't he wearing orange? Didn't you know?" Well, I hate to admit it, but there's many, many, many times that I've gone in without orange on. That was just my thing that I would do. I didn't want anybody seeing me. I didn't want anybody knowing where I was going. I would go far enough in so that nobody else would hunt there. I figured nobody else was hunting there. And that's one of the reasons why I was in that area. To this day, people are really afraid to go into that area. And I liked that a lot. Okay. I knew I'd be the only guy in there. So I had a good chance on the location and everything and be near the top of the mountain with the apple orchards all around it and blah, blah, blah. That you're going to be shooting all down around the bottom of the mountain. These deer are going to run to the top of the mountain because you're just too lazy or fat or whatever. You don't want to go up that mountain. But he put his head around my side of the tree. He's got his right leg pretty much on my side of the tree too, but he put his head around my side of the tree and he looked straight over that stone wall and he looked over at me and he looked back over the stone wall and then he snapped his head right back at me. Like he was flabbergasted. He was completely like, what the heck, you know? Um, totally surprised, shocked that I was standing there and yeah, I was pretty much shocked at what I was looking at too because never seen one before. I can assure you that had it looked like an ape, and I had a lot of time to study it. Between the time it was laying on the ground to the time it was starting to get up, to the time it was getting up, to the time it was fully erect, I had a lot of time to look at it. I had a lot of time to put that peg in a hole, you know. And I said to myself, that's a Sasquatch right there. That's looking directly at me. He looked right, snapped his head right at me. He couldn't believe I was there, and I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking to myself, well, and people may are probably going to laugh a little bit. You should have a sense of humor. Particularly if you've been through a lot in your life, you should have a sense of humor by now, anyways. But I was looking at it, saying to myself, well, gall darn, this it's a Sasquatch, and probably um, gonna get myself a free drink downtown. I can't, telling people that I seen this Sasquatch, regardless, And he swung his left leg around the tree. So he broadsided me. He's looking directly at me. We're faced off. I got my 12 gauge pointer right at his chest. I don't know what's going to go on here. I have no clue how they act. I definitely had no clue how they really looked, which was a bit of a shocker, and I'll get into that. But um, he went and did something that totally um, destroyed my hope of just saying, if you would just seen a Sasquatch and he ran away or whatever, that's one thing, but this wasn't going to happen. This is not what transpired that day, and you'll see why I kind of tried to keep my mouth shut for such a long time. Is he took both hands, palms facing me, fingers closed, pointed straight up towards the sky, elbows in at about his hip, and his hands out about chest level. So his hands looked like, I don't know if you see my hand. It looked just like that, flat, both hands right out in front of him. He pumped them once or twice. He pumped them, and I'm like, this is you know uh, bizarre. Okay, so now I'm checking wind direction. I'm basically doing a body check on my own self, a well-being. We'll call it a well-being check. And I let a little huff of air out, see which direction it blew in, and blew in over my right shoulder. So I'm still downwind. And he can't smell me. I looked at my shotgun. I could actually smell the gun oil on it. A plane went overhead, headed towards Bradley International Airport. I even looked at the compass. It was a hand-me-down shotgun from my great uncle, and he had a compass on the stock. I don't know how reliable a compass is on a steel gun, but you know, I had to check everything I could. My wristwatch. I don't know exactly what time it was. I don't really remember. I know it was about 10, 11 minutes after the hour. He did that with his hands, and then he started taking steps towards me. And I'm not I'm not worried about it anymore. After all was said and done, it did disturb me that he knew how to approach, because he is going to approach, and you'll hear this. He started taking a couple steps towards me, and he took his right hand, fist closed, pointer finger out, and pointed it directly to my chest. And then he pointed it to his own chest. I was able to, over the years, look all these things up and see what this particular one meant. I mean, the first one I think was a little obvious, like, whoa, wait a minute, because I did lower my shotgun. And that second hand gesture was just him either telling me that we were brothers, we were equal, or he was recognizing me as being a master of the woods. He said he was surprised too, and telling me that he is the master of the woods. And that hand signal is because you point to somebody's chest first, you're recognizing them first. If you point to your own chest first, then you point to them. That's basically, you don't want to do that in a bar. You're kind of like picking a fight with somebody. And that's how I kind of lean towards that. And then I've seen a lot of and heard a lot of other Native American sign language, and whether it's his pig sign or whatever it is, but that's what he did. You know, he continued walk. He stopped, and he actually looked at me. He was waiting for something to, like a light to go on, and if you're teaching somebody something, and he started walking towards me a little bit more, and stopped, and he put his hands basically in the same position, his elbows in around the waist, his hands out the same distance, palms down this time. And then he turned his hands up, palms up. And I took that to mean, under the circumstances, that he had no food and he was looking for food. Now I'm getting the drift in my head that I might have to parlay some kind of hand signal back to this fourth person being, Sasquatch, Sabe, Bigfoot, whatever anybody wants to call them. They're people. So only people do things like this, and they look like people, like very ancient people, big ancient people. He continued walking towards me, and now I got the drift that I got to go back in my head and try to remember some of this stuff, because he's getting closer. And he takes his um, hand again, and he points over my left, over my right, pointer finger, right hand. If you look up anything, it deals with ancient language evolution or ancient language evolution. They'll say it's one of the first things. If you go to a zoo, you'll actually see an orangutan do that, or chimpanzees stick their hand out, point your finger just like that, point around. Little babies do that if you let them. Okay, so maybe it was just obviously he knew that I didn't speak his language. I had never heard it anyway, so not until after this I started looking things up and heard the Sierra sounds and all of that. But he continued walking towards me, and used to really bother me when I got to this point. To tell people, I would just say maybe to protect my own psyche, just say 5 yards. He's 5 yards away. It's impossible when you hear what happened. He stopped in front of me. Remember, I'm taking in every bit of information that I possibly can from the get-go, from the time that I spot him from the tree, his height. I'm trying to get his weight in. I'm trying to through all of this stuff. There's a lot going on. And I'm trying to get all this information in. Well, he stuck his hand out, and he turned his hand palm up, his right hand palm up, and he wanted me to take a look at his hand, obviously. And I had to actually look down, from my point of view, down, not out and down. He had his hand down, and I had to look down. He had to be within 5 feet of me in order to do something like that. I noticed the hair, the length of the hair, 5, 6 inches long. Where you have hair on your forearm, they have hair. Where you don't, they don't. On the back of your hand, I seen the back of the hand. Where you have hair, again, take a look at your hand. They have hair. Where you don't, they don't. His hands were very clean. The hair was very clean. What I thought originally was black hair was not black hair at all. You can find people with extremely dark brown hair that it looks black. It's not. His skin complexion was dark, 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 like I don't want to say Jamaican or African American. It was like dark, dark, dark brown. Like you had like a funny hue to it. Like you could mistake it at that 35-yard mark for being black. You couldn't tell where the hair on his face started and where it ended. It matched so well to the hair. He had blue eyes. I seen his eyes when he was about halfway to me, and I could really see his eyes now. I'm trying to, as a fighter, I'm trying to watch everything. It's his body movements. Remember, I still got a sidearm on me. My shotgun, I was slung now. It was inaccessible, at that range. I wouldn't know where to shoot him anyways, but the sidearm, I figured if my last resort would be just pulling out, put it up underneath his chin, you know, and shooting him that way if something went bad, because I don't know what he's doing with his hand. But when he turned that palm up and he looked at me, he kind of nodded for me to look at his hand. I started looking at his hand. I'm a little uneasy about what's going on, concerned, I'll say. I stood a little bit above his bicep, but below his shoulder. I'm 6'3". He didn't stink. They don't all stink. A lot of them, there's a lot of eyewitness testimonies out there that they do bathe. Okay. There's plenty of water around. They do that. There's also places where they go that they will stink. When you get into that skunk cabbage and things like that, or a cow pasture, or a cow pond, we used to call them when we were kids. But while this is going on, I'm dropping my right hand down to my sidearm, and I'm trying to do it in such a way that I'm not moving my shoulder. And just as my palm was touching because I wanted to have my hand on it in case something went wrong. And just as my palm is hitting the my grip on my pistol, he caught movement and didn't like it. And with his left hand, he tapped his right hand. He tapped it. He wanted me to look at it, and some people want to say, well, maybe he wanted your gun. Come on now. That's he didn't need a gun, let me tell you that right now. I guesstimated his weight north of 500 pounds, 600 pounds, excellent condition like you would not believe. Is just unbelievably ripped. Okay, massive, just massive. Um, yeah, I relinquished my going for my handgun and looked back at his palm. Why was he doing that? Why did he want me to look at his palm? So I'm studying his palm, His palm looked just like our palm. Same exact thing. Except all I can tell people is there was no lifeline. And some people say, well, there are people on this earth born with no lifeline. That's good. He had no lifeline. That's all I'm telling you. I had to make mental notes at the time, and there was something missing, and that's, you know, looking up that line, I found out that was called a lifeline. Um, Fingernails clean. He's very, very clean. Um, at that point, I looked at him again, and I gave him some of those hand gestures back, and the hand gesture to his left and right over his shoulders. That must have been. I thought that he was asking me where I came from. Some people said maybe he was telling you to leave. That could very well be, because that's exactly what he did. Is he bowed his head to me like out of respect, and he turned just a little bit to face that stone wall, and he put both his hands up like a megaphone. You'd use them as a megaphone in your mouth, and he whooped 3 times. 7, 8 years ago, nobody ever knew they were doing that. Nobody ever seen them do that. They do that. Okay. And he looked back at me, and he looked back over that stone wall, and he whistled. And it was that come here whistle. And he gave a hand gesture with his right hand, and he pointed back in the direction that he came from. And he looked back at me one last time, and he kind of bowed his head a little bit towards me, and he went back towards that in the direction of where he first came from, that tree. And he went beyond that tree, probably, I figured for a total of probably around 55 yards. And he turned back towards me, and he didn't run. He didn't speed walk. He didn't jog. He very fluidly just went over there, very fluidly. And he got over there, and he turned back towards me. And that's when I heard on the other side of that stone wall, it sounded like a rhinoceros or something coming through them saplings. It was just a ruckus coming through. I just didn't know if it was one more, how many was coming. I was able to figure out there was obviously another one involved. I think there was plenty more of them involved in that ambush on those deer. They were hunting the same deer as me. He was set up on a pinch point in case anything did get through. That was his objective, to run them down, and finish them off. But this other one came through them saplings. I just picked up a little bit of body movement, and it had to cross that little path that dog leg back down and stuff. And it went over that path, and then there's a brook. It's called Drake Brook, and it went jumped that brook, and then I could see the full body on this thing. And this one was cinnamon colored, and this thing was elbows and heels. And I've shot deer on the run, and this thing would have been really hard to hit. That's how fast this thing was. And it got over to that big one there, and they started up this little chatter thing. And I've had people say, well, did you think that maybe that big one was really like the alpha or whatever? And it was set up there to oversee the whole ambush point and direct what was going on and everything. And that it didn't like what had transpired. Well, it could be because what had happened was they started chatting back and forth, and they're kind of quarter turned towards me. And that big one, and by the way, it sound like a samurai chatter, because years later I heard the samurai chatter, and I just wanted to, if I would have had Ron Moorhead's telephone number, I would have called him. I would have said, hey Ron, guess what? That's them. They really do that, even though you didn't see him do it. I don't believe he did, but that's them. That's them doing that, you know? And so I seen those three things, four things actually, that they do, that they definitely do, and that's when the big one, he pointed right at me, and that littler one that stood above his shoulder, which would have made him taller than me. Um, he bent down just a, or she bent down just a tiny little bit to look underneath a little branch on a sapling that was out there to get a good view at me. I hadn't moved. I hadn't moved really an inch from where I was standing. I was really still pretty much amazed. I really wanted to follow them at that point, particularly when I seen them talking. I want to know where are you going. And a lot of people used to say, "Are you nuts?" Or, why would you do such a thing? And well, it's come on, wouldn't you? I mean, it was what I would consider a pleasant encounter, and I mean, it wasn't horrifying at all. I want to know, where do they go? They go into caves, they roll boulders in front of the caves, or or they go, where do they go? But the big one pointed me out, and the little one bent down to look underneath that little branch there, and he looked back at the big one, and he snapped his head back at me like he had to take a second look. He couldn't believe I was standing there. I'm like, yeah, I just got ratted out. Let's see where this is going to go. And the big one takes again that ancient evolution language thing there. He takes that finger and he points it to the chest of the other one. And he basically gives him the sign that you're going to go that way, which was semicircle to my right hand side because I was facing them. Then he pointed to his own chest and he made that semicircle back around to my left hand side. And they split up. And I got the message that they didn't want me to follow them at all, and I was not about to. But I knew that what I needed to do is I needed to go over there and measure the uh, the tree on the tree, and then try to get a stride distance on the stride, so that I could someday, maybe this would happen, that you would all hear this story, my testimony right here, and I'd be able to relate all this to you. I went over to the tree and I stood next, straight up to the tree, put my hand on top of my head. I'm 6'3". And then I measured up from there using my finger. I'm a butcher by trade, so I measured up. I come up with 7'8" tall, 7'8" tall, and north of 500 pounds, in excellent condition. And I found where it was a little bit of a knoll there, tiny little knoll there. I figured he must have crawled up there. That's the only thing I can think of. And it was a dried out, kind of a dried out vernal pool. I don't know if everybody knows what a vernal pool is, but look it up. And there was some old foliage there and stuff, and it was pressed down. I could see where he went through, but I could see no really good tracks. So what I did was I tried to jump in the track to figure out stride, which then you can correlate that to the height of them. So I would have something to go back on, and I couldn't match that stride. So I tried to jump into it. I still couldn't match it. So I got back a couple of steps and kind of took a short run start because I didn't know how much time I had. I was becoming very concerned at this point, and I still fell short of that stride. Um, I left that area. I never went over that stone wall. Those were my deer. I didn't need to see anything like that. That was theirs. For all I knew, they could be flanking me. That was a flanking maneuver. They could be flanking me to make sure that I don't get it. And this one here could have been the alpha just telling me, maybe you should leave or something because the other ones might not be so nice. We know today that they have family groups of 2 to 4, sometimes 3 in that one area alone, as I know of one testimony that they seen 2 adults and 2 juveniles with them. So that would make it at 4. And I've heard of other encounters in that area. So, and then from the family unit, you have clans that they do work together. How big of an area each family unit is in, I don't really know at this point. I do know a lot. I have a lot of knowledge about where they would be and the things that they eat and stuff, but that's about it. A lot of these places are going to be inaccessible to you. That's the way you would do it if you were going to go hide out. But all in all, is you can understand now why that, you know, um, that big one there destroyed my chances of going to the bar and getting Yes, getting a drink forever because I think at that point they probably would have called the authorities and just maybe had me locked up for being crazy, you know. And believe me, back then you're looking at the mid to late 80s anyways. That was before you had all this internet, really good internet access and everything else, and all these forums. And when I was ever able to start getting on there, um that is exactly what I was looking for. I never spoke on any of them, never talked to anybody on any of them until I was sure, because I just seen there was so much browbeating going on back then. I figured that you know you pray to God that somebody comes forward, that had a similar incident, because I really truly did not want to be the only one. But here I am. And the reason why I'm doing it, because I have two messages. One to the eyewitnesses that give their testimonies. Without their testimonies, we wouldn't be having any knowledge of where to go look. We wouldn't be able to put together any type of research on their behavioral aspects or what they do. The other one is that if you can only imagine this, and it's a proven fact that they do have a language, a spoken language, and we know why they have a spoken language. Okay, and we know that they use sign language. We know that they make structures, glyphs. Let's call them, I like to call them the forest people. And if you look at it in that aspect and how intelligent they really are, and they used to trade with the Native Americans, is it possible that they have something for us that we should know? They broke off the relationships. We can't be trusted. They're heavily attracted towards people who are honest and trustworthy, spiritual. These are very spiritual um, beings. Okay. And keep in mind too that if you're the ugliest person on the earth, you probably wouldn't want to be looking at going up to little kids or anything like that, because you'd be scaring the hell out of them. And the same with them. I'm pretty sure they understand it. They are aware. But what science wants is they want two DBs, okay, to actually prove their existence. If we're going to research, let's research correctly. Let's research the time of the day, the air temperatures, what you're wearing, who's with you. If you put some perfume on, or you put some cologne on, or whatever the case may be, write everything down. Write every detail down. If you have an encounter, immediately start writing down every detail that you can remember, no matter how small it is. Okay, because it is very pertinent. You may think that it isn't, but it is. um used to like to leave out the time, part of the time of the year, but it's very pertinent because now we pattern them. We know what time they come through this area, and there are other areas. Nobody ever believed that they would migrate. Migration might only be 20 miles. It's still a migration. Okay. It might be 200 miles, might be 2,000 miles, but it's still a migration. And it's the behavioral aspect. We're beyond, we have stories. Some of us, or I know a lot of the testimonies too that are absolutely amazing, that's not even out in the public just yet, you know. But that's what I do, and the way I push this is I had the opportunity to have somebody work with me, an excellent artist, for about 7 months on these drawings on the sign language. And we're just hoping that people, it's not AI. Please understand that it's hard for some people to accept some things. It's called uncanny valley, but um, I sell these shirts, and I'm hoping that it'll catch on, that people will stand up and want to be counted and say, we don't need DB. These things, this is what they kind of look like here. All your close encounters say the same thing. And when you hear somebody say they They looked ape-like. They're describing a nose. Try to sit down with somebody that never seen your mom before and have them draw a picture of your mom off of your description. This is not easy. Okay, you're gonna use well, you don't have anything to go by except your words. You have no pictures of anything else. So you have to describe absolutely everything that there is. So that's my thing right now is with these pictures, you go to newenglandencounters.com, newenglandencounters.com. I have t-shirts on there and I have the sign language that was used on there. And we're hoping that people will come up and ask you about it and you can actually educate them and tell them they have a language, they are aware, they do use sign language. These are a people is what they are. We do not need a dead body, and please learn how to research. Please help push this for some of us. Anyways, but your average encounter is between 5 and 11 seconds. I've been doing this for about 38 years, maybe a little bit more than that, since my encounter. And I started by studying me. Why me? Why did this happen to me? And why such a lengthy period of time? Did my encounter, because my encounter lasted a lengthy period of time, and there was a lot to understand there. And then I started digging into what it was that I had in common with other people that were having encounters. So I just didn't go out there and just start looking at trees and structures and all of that. I had some telltale signs back when I was a lot younger, and I just bypassed it all because particularly my generation, we're brought up, and if somebody tells you the sky is blue, even if it's pitch black outside, the sky is blue. Doesn't matter. If it doesn't matter if they say it's blue, you better go by it. But this encounter here, it turns out that I had always felt that I was in the epicenter of where this encounter happened, and as it really did turn out, there's quite a few encounters within a two-mile radius of where I was, and I was in the exact center of a lot of this activity. The area is known as the Cobble Mountain Reservoir area in the state of Massachusetts. A lot of people feel that, there's not that much area in Massachusetts. Well, there's a lot of area that you can't get into. A lot of areas where it's treacherous. People could disappear in there very, very easily. In this particular area, it's very steep in legend, very steep in history. Uh, Folklore and everything else, but I chose this area to hunt. I hunted all over the East Coast, and my home was basically in Montgomery growing up and in Westfield, Mass. So when I wanted to hunt nearby, didn't have much time, that's what I would do is I would go up to this area. And this particular day, I was by myself. Again, there's been a lot of thing activity up there. Legends called the Wild Man from Connecticut, but it's on the backside of that. Uh, Wild Willie was another name given to him, but I didn't believe it. I seen the Patty Grimlin film. I just figured, hey, it's every kid's dream to get the biggest deer in the woods or turkey or the biggest fish in the lake. And I seen that film, and I said, man, that would be really cool to see something like that. But it's gone now. It's probably somebody shot it or whatever. I mean, even back then it looked legit to me. You can see certain aspects of in that film that even an amateur would say, boy, it does look like a person. You know what? They do when they walk. They can be mistaken very easily for a person at a distance, particularly if you're not aware of distance, or the uh, how tall something may be. That can throw your senses right off right there. And you got more to go into that too. But myself in the past, people have asked me my background, and I hate to talk about my background because you're going to start looking at it and you're going to start uh, categorizing me, geez, I can be believed, or gee, well, he's really articulate, so he can be believed better, or you're best off not knowing any of that because in the bottom line, when the day ends, I'm an eyewitness, and this is my testimony, and everybody else that's out there is an eyewitness. They have nothing on me, I have nothing on them. They just seen this and they wished from the very beginning that there was going to be somebody who was going to listen to it. In my situation, yeah, I sure the heck did. I took a beating for 38 years, 37 years. Took me a long time to come out, with the bullying and the laughing and everything else. And I finally get my I don't want to say my last hurrah, but I will be giving a talk at the Moses Reservation in June, 2 miles from where I had my encounter, and right near that epicenter. And that's been something that I have always thought of, that I would like people to actually hear this, because I believe that there's a message in this, and you're all going to understand that when I finish, that there absolutely is a message in here. And we have a choice to make here. Do we actually research this? Do we research what's really going on? It used to be 7 years ago, when I first really started talking about it, that people started, they were always saying, what are they? What are they? What is it? What is it? It's not a what are they? It's a who are they? We have always known. It has always been there. It's just been hidden from us. There's things that that can't be admitted to us. If you had found a almost an extinct lizard on your property, and you wanted to build on your property, guess what? You're not anymore. You would have to set aside land for such things, for certain animals and everything. So you put it into your own little play box there, and you figure out the reason why it's not really brought to light. Some people want to downplay the DNA and everything else. Well, there's reasons for everything, and I assure you, your eyewitnesses, they've had these encounters for any length of period of time, and any distance. They're extremely rare to have an encounter over the 11-second mark, even the 30-second mark. And the encounters, when you get to a class A, class B, class C, a class A could be anywhere from, 15 feet to uh, 30, 40, 50 yards. That's considered a class A. So you can categorize the story in my testimony, and you can try to extrapolate your own information from that and what you can use in this. And I assure you that there is information in this, and that's the reason why I'm here and haven't given up, and I'm telling everybody.
Man, I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. Ernie is such a great guy, and I love having people like him on the show. I love talking to hunters, especially because they spend a lot of time out in the woods and they know how nature works. They just spend out time in nature, and they know when something is going to happen a lot of the times. And he was able to read that situation and walk out of there with an incredible encounter that was absolutely life changing. If you enjoyed that, do me a favor and go show him some support. Check out his website. He's just a great guy, and I'm very honored to have had him on the show. There's a lot of things that I just, like I say, and I'll continue saying, God's universe, I don't understand. But these things, these creatures, in my opinion, are highly intelligent. And if you see one, there's probably another one really close by. So keep your head on the swivel when you're out there. Pay attention. He dropped a lot of nuggets in that interview, and it was just an honor to have him on the show. But if you have an encounter you've been sitting on and you want to come forward and have a safe place to share it, you can send it to me by email at mysteriesunknownpodcast@gmail.com. Or if you just got an encounter you want to share with me and you don't want to come on the show, I'd love to get your email. I'll do my best to get back to everybody who emails me. And I appreciate all the support. If you guys are finding value in this channel, make sure you like and subscribe. Tell your friends about it. It really helps the channel grow. And I appreciate everybody that's out there. Guys, it's the most important thing you can do. I'm going to say it. Stay prayed up. We'll see you in the next episode.